If you're in HR, how often are you benchmarking labor dollars against other businesses? What about other locations or teams just within your company? Today, Kim McNeil and I will be covering how to benchmark costs between locations and teams to ensure industry standards are being met. Let's get right into it. So looking at this slide here, talking about defining your objectives first and foremost, selecting the right metrics for your company. And I think that's a really big topic alone. I mean, we can go on a whole tangent on that. Identifying benchmarking partners, collecting and analyzing data, and then identifying performance gaps. So my question for you, Kim, is why do you think benchmarking overtime hours, specifically in this case, between locations or teams is important?
Well, you need to understand how different locations are operating. So to go back to the example I was talking about being with federal government contracting, oftentimes there were different work sites, even different agencies in the government, but they were doing similar work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could look from site to site. Well, this site has got a similar workload, similar amount of people, but their overtime costs could be low or non-existent, where this site, almost identical in every way, complete opposite. What can we learn? What is being done at site A that's not being done at site B in terms of from an operational perspective? You also want to make sure that you're in line with this specific area for cost overall, right? So if this site is in, the New York metropolitan area, that's going to run and operate different and have different costs due to the nature of local, laws and pay, et cetera, versus a site that may be in an area that is not, as industrious or, populated or different employment laws. So, I find it key in my experience to look from site to site because there could be keys, and this plays into that networking component. You may need to meet with that site, meet with those managers and people working there and understand what are they doing that these other sites aren't doing in terms of their amount of hours and workload and how they're managing it, particularly if they have similar tasks and job.
Absolutely. We actually, I've shouted them out so many times. We have a client called Reef, and they are a 5,000 location, company where they do a lot of events on parking lots, and they rent out these parking lots. They have all these managers across the states, right? And there are so many locations to keep track of. It was kind of hard to pin down where that financial drain was coming from, where these labor costs were stemming from at the end of the day. So obviously using, in this case, Workforce's reporting functionality, it was really easy for them to kind of grow from that labor and scheduling standpoint and kind of grow past that financial drain that they were experiencing. And, at the end of the day, it was easy for, the HRS manager, John, and the whole executive team, and even the frontline managers that were working these locations to kind of see that bird's eye perspective just on the dashboard view in this case. It was so nice for them to be able to see that. So yeah, talking about comparing and contrasting different locations or even teams across if you don't have many locations to kind of compare that data with. So how can organizations ensure comprehensive and accurate benchmarking? How can HR build on that process?
Well, at the end of the day, this is where, again, technology is going to be key. For your point of dashboards are critical,
Yeah.
because if you're doing this, for lack of a better word, pen and paper or creating internal spreadsheets or trying to manually get these figures, that could be a time-consuming task in and of itself. And many, people may be short-staffed, departments of one. So I definitely wouldn't advocate to take that on that way. But you may find that there's technology that you already have in place, HRS systems, payroll systems that you may have in place already that you could start pulling this data from to look at. So I think that that's going to be key if you can create, a way to have a center point for it, that you can feed things in on a regular basis. Running a report is a little bit more easier pill to swallow than if I've got to go to like everyone specifically.
Yep.
I've got to pull up different spreadsheets. I'm taking a number from here to there. That also increases error to happen as well. I mean, we are human after all. So, there's an error component there as well, or different people may be keeping records differently. So, that's where streamlining and having a center system or even if, it may be something like that you already have in place, to pull that information will be key.
Absolutely. How can HR strike the right balance again between cost management and maintaining optimal team performance, right? Nailing staffing levels when benchmarking across locations or even teams?
So I think balance is a good objective to have, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes it may be an unrealistic goal. So I wouldn't put so much pressure on yourselves to have a everything is balanced, but you always want to make sure that things are optimized, right?
Mhm.
And things are consistent and they're grounded in data. It's grounded in business and job related needs. So that way, if there are differences, right? If we understand why those differences exist, right? And in the understanding over time, you may work towards getting to that balance.
Mhm.
So I always, when I see questions like that or thoughts like that, I always like to put that in place that it
Yeah.
might not, we all want it to be, even across the board, but there may be specific reasons why in one area, one work site location, or one position or department, it does work this way, and in another it doesn't. But I think we need to understand that that difference A exists, and B, why does it exist, so we can determine if that is the best way for it to be.
Absolutely. I think that's such a good point that not everything is going to be perfectly balanced. In fact, it's a very unrealistic achievement at the end of the day, but you can get pretty close to it for sure. I love to end with this question to ask all my guests: what are one or two top tips, actions, or takeaways our audience can leave with to better keep labor costs in check coming into 2024?
I think, the first point that you've got to do is look at what were the costs. This is the perfect time. The year has ended. Hopefully by now you've got all your data points in. So understand, how did we spend, what were labor costs last year? Were they effectively used? Were we happy with those? And if any of those questions are a no, or I'm not sure, then this is the time to dig into it, start pulling that historical data,
Mhm.
maybe start engaging in things like job analysis, workforce planning, to understand what we've done. Was it the best thing we should be doing? And then do we understand what needs to be done and how we can plan for the rest of the year? So that, my thing is, you've got to look at where what you've done and where you've been to go forward.
Thank you so much for watching that segment from our webinar on how to keep labor costs in budget with rising wages. If you would like to watch the full webinar, click this video here and be sure to subscribe for more content like this.